In this presentation, we will talk about what we should expect from a SIRE 2.0 inspection. Let's talk about the SIRE 2.0 inspectors. Inspectors have solid maritime practical experience and see a lot of vessels, so they have a great understanding of good practice. They've also received a lot of training under the SIRE 2.0 program. In particular, inspectors have been trained and assessed in the human factors component of SIRE 2.0. An inspector aims to gain confidence that barriers will be effective when needed by testing them in a safe way. They want to recognize great performance that exceeds expectations and identify opportunities fairly to improve systems. Importantly, inspectors will look at the issues with the system, not the person. They are interested in the whole system and recognize that the people they talk to are just a sample and will not blame individuals for something they cannot do. The inspector will look at all the parts that contribute to the barrier and will report against each SIRE 2.0 question based on condition of hardware, usefulness of procedures, and conditions that support people to be successful, or the performance-influencing factors. Not every SIRE 2.0 question has a human component. The SIRE 2.0 project reviews all questions and selects those questions where the human part of the system was most important. For important tasks, the inspector will ask someone who normally has to do that task to walk it through or talk it through. People will only be asked about things which are a normal part of their role, and the inspector will treat them as the expert, asking open questions to allow the crew the opportunity to explain in their own words. A person does not need to be able to give a textbook answer. They can do what they normally do or describe it, or say where they would look for guidance, or say who they would turn to for help. There are some things you can do that will help an inspector get a good picture of your vessel. Inspectors will follow a set route around the vessel's systems. Try and help the inspector stick to their plan. Inspectors want to talk to people who normally do the job, so make people available who know the particular area or tasks involved. For a task that everyone needs to know, e.g. donning a life jacket, an inspector may ask any member of crew to demonstrate, so prepare people for that possibility. Inspectors will want people to be comfortable and understand what the inspection is about and how it works, so give the crew a briefing on what to expect. Let's look at how the conversation might go. Here we have an inspector who walks into the cargo control room and introduces himself to the duty officer. The ship's staff are busy in the control room as there's a cargo operation in progress. The inspector waits until there is a pause in the operation and asks if it's okay to start asking questions, making sure that no critical operations are ongoing and the cargo operation is steady. The SIRE 2.0 question is, were the master and all officers with the direct responsibility for cargo, tank cleaning or ballast operations familiar with the requirements of the ISCOT Ship Shore Safety Checklist, SSSCL, and were appropriate sections of the checklist in use with all applicable provisions and agreements maintained throughout? But this is the question the inspector has to answer. To be able to answer this, the inspector talks to the crew and uses what they find to answer the question. Here, the inspector asks the crew member if they have a procedure that references the Ship Shore Safety Checklist, and they do. The inspector asks to see it. The inspector then asks to see the most recent checklist and reviews it, selecting one item on the list, firefighting equipment readiness. The inspector asks the officer if they can describe what equipment this covers and what checks were made before starting operations. The officer says that it covers fire hoses being rigged before and after the manifold, the international fire connection in place, a dry powder extinguisher ready, and foam monitors ready for use. The officer hasn't mentioned checking that the fire pumps work, but the inspector checks this by asking how they ensure that the fire pumps are operational. The officer explains that it was tested before arrival. The inspector asks to see the terminal mooring plan, and the officer has no problem supplying the information. The inspector sees that it has been ticked and that the vessel is moored in accordance with the terminal mooring plan. The inspector asks the duty officer about the repetitive checks they are required to do, asking when and how often the checks are being conducted, and asks what the officer found on one of the checks selected from the checklist. The officer says that they haven't done that check yet, but they were just about to, so he could show them. The inspector accompanies the officer, who demonstrates the checks that were being conducted. The inspector categorizes this conversation as expected. Let's take another question and look at the conversation. Here, the SIRE 2.0 question is, were the master, officers, and galley staff familiar with the location, purpose, and operation of the fixed and portable fire extinguishing systems provided in the galley? Were the systems in good working order and available for immediate use? And were galley ranges, exhaust vents, filter cowls free of grease or combustible material? But remember, this is the question the inspector has to answer, not the crew. In this example, the inspector visits the galley after lunch. Inspector: that was a great lunch, thank you. Galley crew: I'm glad you liked it. Inspector: do you have time to answer a few questions about the galley? Galley crew: yes, I haven't started on dinner yet. Inspector: how often do you check the filters on the ventilation hood? Galley crew: I don't know, but I know who does. He calls another member of the galley crew. Galley crew 2: it's on this label on the side of the hood. These were changed 2 months ago. We change them every 6 months. Inspector: they do look a bit greasy. Could you take them out and let me look inside the vent, please? Galley crew 2: of course. Inspector: that looks nice and clean inside, so they are working well. Thank you. The inspector may go on to ask someone to show how they'd put out an oil pan fire using a fire blanket. Galley crew: I think the fire blankets are here. I've only done it in training. Inspector: that's okay, just show me what you'd do. Galley crew: I'd turn off the heat and pull out the blanket, twist it in my hands and lay it over like this. He drops the blanket. Inspector: no problem, have another go. Inspector: good, just be careful to remember to keep your head back from the heat as you put it over. Galley crew: oh yes, I remember that. The inspector decides the answer to this question is as expected.